1. Intro. Your mind speaks to you all day. It tells you what to fear, what to regret, what might go wrong next. And most of the time, you believe it. But here's the uncomfortable truth the Stoics discovered centuries ago. Your mind is not an objective narrator. It exaggerates, it assumes, it lies with confidence. You don't suffer because of what happens to you. You suffer because of the story your mind tells you about what happens. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the soul becomes colored by its thoughts. If that's true, then every anxious thought quietly reshapes your life. In this video, we're going to uncover the Stoic explanation behind why your mind misleads you, and how learning to step back from your thoughts can change everything. Before we continue, if you're drawn to ancient wisdom, mental clarity, and calm strength in a chaotic world, subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers. This channel is for those who want to think deeper and live lighter. Now, let's begin. 2. Modern struggle. Evelyn isn't falling apart on the outside. She shows up to work, answers texts, smiles at the right moments. But the moment she's alone, her mind starts sprinting. A single awkward sentence from a meeting becomes evidence that she's not good enough. A delayed reply turns into a full story. They're upset. I messed up. I'm losing people. She tries to correct the thought, but it multiplies, like a browser with 50 tabs open, each one demanding her attention. Daniel has a different mask. His life looks controlled. Gym at 6, coffee at 7, meetings stacked like bricks, yet inside, it's constant pressure. His mind replays conversations like courtroom footage, searching for what he should have said. He predicts failure before it happens, then calls it being realistic. At night, he lies in bed and negotiates with his own thoughts. If I can just figure it out, I'll finally relax. But the mind doesn't reward him with peace. It rewards him with more problems to solve. Neither of them is dealing with a real emergency. That's what makes it worse. They feel guilty for struggling. They tell themselves to be grateful. They tell themselves other people have it harder. And still, the weight stays, because the suffering isn't coming from the world. It's coming from the commentary running in their heads. They don't need more motivation. They don't need another productivity trick. They need one simple thing most people never learn: how to stop treating every thought like a command. 3. Stoic reframe. Marcus Aurelius would look at Evelyn and Daniel and say something that sounds almost too simple. You're not trapped by life. You're trapped by your judgments about life. To a modern mind, that can feel insulting, like he's minimizing real pain. But the Stoic move isn't to deny emotion. It's to separate what happens from what you add. An email arrives late. A friend goes quiet. A mistake is made. These are events, neutral facts in the world. The suffering begins when the mind instantly paints meaning onto them. This is rejection. This is danger. This proves I'm failing. The mind doesn't wait for evidence. It writes a story first, then forces your body to react as if the story is true. That's why Marcus wrote, in his private journal, that we are harmed not by things, but by the views we take of them. And he wasn't writing for an audience. He was writing to himself, because even an emperor could be bullied by his own thoughts. The Stoic reframe is this: a thought is an impression, not a verdict. It's a first draft, not the final truth. Your mind produces mental images the way lungs produce breath, constantly, automatically. But you don't have to treat every breath as a message, and you don't have to treat every thought as an order. So when the mind says, "You're not good enough," the Stoic response is not to argue for hours. It's to step back and ask one calm question. Is this fact, or is this interpretation? If it's interpretation, you have options. You can revise it. You can delay it. You can refuse to sign your name under it. And that one shift changes everything. Because the moment you stop calling thoughts truth, you stop living like a hostage. You start living like a witness, clear-eyed, grounded, and free enough to choose your next move. 4. The mind's lie. The mind's lie is rarely dramatic. It doesn't always shout. Most of the time, it speaks in a tone that sounds like you. That's what makes it dangerous. It turns a feeling into a fact. You wake up heavy, and the mind concludes, "This is my life now." You feel tension before a meeting, and it whispers, "You're about to embarrass yourself." A friend doesn't respond, and the mind fills the silence with certainty. They don't care. Notice the pattern. The mind takes incomplete information and forces an ending. Stoics understood that the first impression is automatic, but agreement is optional. The problem is, we rarely notice the moment we agree. We treat thoughts like headlines: quick, urgent, unquestionable, and once we accept them, the body obeys. Heart rate rises, shoulders tighten, breath shortens, not because reality changed, but because the mind created a threat. The mind also lies by time traveling. It drags you into the past to rehearse shame, then drags you into the future to rehearse disaster. It calls this preparation, but it's really just fear wearing a smarter outfit. And here's the most common lie of all: if you think harder, you'll feel better. So you analyze, replay, plan, and calculate. You try to solve emotions with logic. But the mind doesn't reward you with relief. It rewards you with another question, another angle, another worst-case scenario. That's why the Stoics didn't try to win arguments inside their heads. They trained for something quieter, recognizing the lie early, before it becomes a life sentence. Because the moment you can say, "This is a thought, not a truth," the spell starts to break. 5. Stoic tool. The observer. The Stoics didn't try to silence the mind. They trained to stand one step behind it. Epictetus called thoughts impressions. An impression is like a knock on the door. It isn't good or bad yet, it's just there. Your power begins in the next moment, whether you open the door and invite it in, or let it pass. This is the observer. The part of you that can watch a thought appear without automatically obeying it. At first, it feels unnatural. A thought arrives, they're judging you, and your body wants to react immediately. Defend, explain, shrink, attack. The Stoic practice is to pause and label it impression, not truth, not prophecy, not a command, just a mental event. Then you ask one simple question Epictetus would approve of: is this within my control? If it isn't, you don't wrestle it, you release it. If it is, you act, quietly, directly, without panic. The observer is not passive. It's precision. It turns emotional noise into a clear decision. Here's how it looks in real life. Evelyn gets a short message from her boss. Her mind starts writing the disaster script, but the observer steps in. I notice fear. She breathes once. She reads the message again. It's just scheduling, nothing more. The threat was invented. Daniel feels the urge to replay a conversation for the 10th time. The observer catches the loop. My mind is rehearsing. He doesn't punish himself for it. He doesn't argue. He redirects to something real. One email, one workout, one honest sentence he can say tomorrow. This is the skill the modern world never teaches. You can be aware of a thought without becoming it. And the more you practice, the quicker it happens. The space between thought and reaction grows. And inside that space, the Stoics placed freedom. 6. Transformation. The change doesn't look like a miracle. It looks like a pause. Evelyn still has anxious thoughts. The difference is, she doesn't chase them like they're alarms. When her mind says, "You're falling behind," she notices the familiar rush in her chest, and she labels it impression, not destiny. She takes one breath and asks, "What's actually true right now?" The room is quiet. The day is normal. One task is in front of her. So she does the next right thing, instead of wrestling an imaginary future. Daniel still feels the urge to control everything. But now he can catch the moment his mind tries to turn uncertainty into catastrophe. He hears the thought, "If I don't fix this, everything collapses." And he answers, calmly, "Maybe, maybe not." He stops feeding the worst-case scenario with more attention. He returns to what's in his hands, one decision, one conversation, one action that matches his values. That's the Stoic transformation. Not becoming emotionless, but becoming unhooked. They start to notice how much of their suffering was optional, not because their problems weren't real, but because their interpretations were excessive. The mind used to feel like a dictator. Now it feels like a noisy commentator. Evelyn begins to speak differently. 2. When she makes a mistake, she doesn't turn it into an identity. She says, "I slipped," not, "I am a failure." She repairs what she can, apologizes when needed, and moves forward without self-punishment. Daniel changes the way he handles silence. He stops treating unanswered messages like rejection. He stops treating every delay like danger. He learns to wait without inventing stories. And in that waiting, something unfamiliar shows up. Space. Not empty space, clear space. The kind where you can hear your own values again. Their minds still produce thoughts, like the sky still produces weather. But the thoughts no longer control the forecast of their day. They're learning the Stoic skill most people miss. Letting the mind speak, without letting it rule. 7. Stoic closing. Your mind will keep talking. That's not a problem. The problem is when you mistake its voice for truth. The Stoics weren't trying to become numb. They were trying to become free. Free from the panic that comes from imagined futures. Free from the shame that comes from replayed pasts. Free from the constant need to fix thoughts that were never facts to begin with. So here's the practice you can take with you today. When a thought shows up, don't fight it, don't worship it, don't obey it. Just observe it and ask, is this fact or interpretation? If it's fact, deal with it directly. If it's interpretation, let it pass like weather. Because you are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. And the moment you notice, you create space. And inside that space, you get your life back, one calm choice at a time. If this helped you, share it with someone whose mind never rests. And let me know in the comments, what thought has been lying to you lately? If you want more Stoic wisdom you can actually use in real life, hit like, subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers, and stay with us. We're building calm strength, one lesson at a time.